I recently read an article somewhere, and I can't quite remember where, but it stated that the least played class in Baldur's Gate 3 was the cleric, which, you know, I understand if you've never played the game before. I mean, who wants to play the support healer class? Everyone wants to play the warrior or the badass sorcerer or sneaky stealthy rogue. However, after finishing my first Baldur's Gate 3 campaign with Shadowheart in my party, I can comfortably say that the cleric is by far one of the strongest classes in the game, and you should totally do a run as a cleric. Now, I'm pretty confident in this statement. So confident, I decided that I would do a whole campaign of Baldur's Gate 3 with a whole party of clerics.
There now, we're all friends again.
I'm going to go through the whole campaign in 3 parts with you to prove just how strong the clerics can be. I'll be rushing to Withers to respec every character I take into my team. I'll also be respecing each into a different subclass of cleric so that we have a good spread and a bit of a variety. And I'll go through each level with you and show you how I'm leveling up each character. Now, let's get this started by introducing my cleric, Tyr. So Tyr is a Mephistopheles tiefling who is a lover of nature and peace. So obviously he's going to be a nature domain cleric. This gives him the domain spell Speak with Animals and Animal Friendship. Now, since this is going to be my second run, I was curious and I decided to give Tyr the backstory of the Dark Urge. I don't know anything about Dark Urge, so this could be quite interesting for Tyr. Surely I won't regret that later on. For cantrips, he gets Mage Hand from being a Mephistopheles tiefling, Guidance, Resistance, Sacred Flame, and I chose Shillag. We're going to settle on Shillag. For his starting spells, he's going to be starting with Guiding Bolt, Shield of Faith, Healing Word, and Sanctuary. His stats I'm going to leave as classic default cleric stat, which is Strength 11, Dexterity 14, Constitution 13, Intelligence 8, Wisdom 17, and Charisma 12. And so, let's start our adventure. So as I said before, we're going to rush through this opening sequence and get to Withers as quickly as we can. So the first thing we did was saved us, because you never know, might come in handy later on down the track. We teamed up with Lae'zel, and obviously we had to save Shadowheart, because, you know, she's the OG cleric. We tried to steal the sword from the Demon King, but we ultimately failed, so just decided to just abandon ship. After crashing, we woke up and teamed up with Shadowheart.
Can't think of better company.
Fought the Intellect of Ours. And after this, we reached level 2. So Tyr gained Cure Wounds, and I switched Sanctuary for Bane because I really didn't think Sanctuary was going to be worth using. Shadowheart, I kept her with the default skills and of Inflict Wound, Guiding Bolt, Healing Word, Cure Wounds, and Shield of Faith. Next up, we collected Asterion and then Gale, and then we went to Withers' Tomb. But we did have to fight our way through the guys inside and fight the skeletons inside before we could actually get to Withers. Once we gained Withers, I basically started changing everyone straight away. Asterion, I made him a Tempest Domain Cleric, which gives him Thunder Wave and Fog. For cantrips, he had Resistance, Blade Ward, and Sacred Flame. And after he leveled up, I gave him the standard spells of Guiding Bolt, Shield Faith, Inflicting Wounds, Healing Word, and Cure Wounds. For Gale, I turned him into a Light Domain. He had the cantrips, Resistance, Thermatuology. Anyway, Sacred Flame. Being the Light Domain Cleric, he got Burning Hands, Fairy Fire. And for his starting spells, Guiding Bolt, Shield of Faith, Protection from Good and Evil, Healing Word, and Bless. So now we had our full party of clerics, and we were ready to go and face the world properly. So the next thing we did was rescued Lae'zel from the cage, although I don't think I was planning on using her anyway, but you know, you never know. And then it was time for our first test with a full team of clerics, defending the grove from the goblins. So basically I knew this fight was coming up, so I used Shield of Faith on the whole party before entering, and then I moved everyone up to the cliff to start off the cutscene.
Open the bloody gate!
Straight away after the cutscene, we had 2 goblins pretty much spawned up on the cliff with us. First up off the rack was Gale, who used Radiance of Dawn, which I didn't realize was a spell that he had in his kit, and it absolutely just wiped the floor with those 2 goblins that spawned on the rocks. So from that point, Guiding Bolt pretty much carried everyone through the fight, and we managed to get through them pretty easily. After entering the grove, we prevented Zevlov and Aradin from fighting each other.
Forgive me, brother. I forgot myself.
We agreed to helping the tieflings out with the druids.
We owe you a great debt. If we're forced to leave now, more of my people will die.
We reached level 3 in the grove, in which I ensured everyone had Spiritual Weapon, which is one of the strongest spells that the clerics can have. We recruited Will, and I decided that I would have Will over Astarion, since in my own personal run, I had already finished the quest line for Astarion and I hadn't gone through Will, so we're going to go with Will.
Oh, darling, I'm hurt. I thought we had something special.
I reclassed Will to a Tempest Cleric and used the exact same specs as I gave Astarion. Next thing, we rescue the Tiefling child from Arabella from Korga.
Out, thief. My grace has its limits.
Then we agreed to help the Tieflings leave.
You will do more than speak.
Poisoned by Nettie, got cured by Nettie.
Gods above. It's a risk, but maybe you deserve a chance.
And then we agreed to go and save Halsin. Spoke to Zevlor again and agreed to also kill all the goblins. Then we wandered up this hill and helped Aphira finish her song, which the voice in my head wasn't too pleased about. Next, we did a little bit more exploring and we found this kid who was being taken by the harpies, so we decided to help. This was our first fight with spiritual weapons, so they came in quite handy against these. However, where I really saw some great stuff was when one of the harpies attacked Will. He had a reaction where he could use Wrath of Storm Lightning. It also allowed him to use his Channel Divinity reaction, Destructive Wrath, which obliterated one of the harpies. Apart from Will's reaction, Spiritual Weapons and Guarding Bolt continued to carry our fight, and Will's Shadow also doing some great damage to the harpies, but basically, you know, got through this fight pretty easily. After we helped the kid, we decided to leave the grove with the intention to recruit Karlach. Since I also hadn't gone through Karlach's story, I decided that I was going to take her into my party as well. Raphael presented himself to us, in which we told him to politely stick it.
Hope. Such a tease.
We also fought the owlbear, which our spiritual weapons, and this flaming ball, which was summoned by Gale as being a part of the light cleric, which pretty much, you know, did most of the damage to it. Anyway, after fighting the owlbear, we continued to recruit Karlach and prevented Will and her from killing each other, which, you know, not going to have great outcome for Will.
Listen to sense now. Don't want this to end badly for either of us.
Decided to replace Shadowheart with Karlach,
Fine. I'll be here whenever you rediscover your taste in company.
and then turned Karlach into a war domain cleric. Because, you know, that's just how Karlach be. Now, instead of the standard stats though with Karlach, because she was going to be a little bit more of the offensive type, I decided I'd give her 2 points in strength instead of dexterity. After that, we long rested and was quite surprised to have Alfira wanting to join our crew.
It's Alfira from the Grove.
And I thought this was quite cool because I hadn't realized that Alfira was a playable character, and I thought, oh, well, I might actually add it to my party, or I might even try and romance her, who knows. And then this happened.
You open your eyes with a lurch, and you are not in your bed. You stand above a body which is in a state of gore nearly beyond recognition. The body of that brave girl who earnestly swore to devote her life to your cause. Her blood covers you, and its warmth feels like the embrace of an old friend.
So everyone was absolutely convinced that Tyr did it.
I'm going to say something I'm confident we're all thinking. Was this your doing?
In which he admitted that he did it to everyone, which everyone was quite happy to blame the tadpoles about, so win-win.
And hope this affliction spreads no further. I'm keeping my eye on you.
Anyway, before we long rested, Karlach had asked us to help kill the worshippers of Tyr who were chasing her, so we decided to find and pretty much kill them all. Although their leader did one-shot both Tyr and Gale. So I was a little bit concerned, but this is where Healing Word is super handy. The fact that it's a bonus action means that you can easily just revive someone at quite a long distance and pick them up off the ground and continue to have an action yourself. So we made short work of them using, as you would have guessed, Spirit Weapons and Guarding Bolt. That night the party was greeted by Missoura, who was, you know, there for Will. And since Will hadn't killed Karlach, well, you know what happens. Will gets turned into a devil. And strangely, later that night, Tyr was greeted by a strange little fellow, Belaratus Fell.
Lord, jubilant day! I have found your vile self at last!
And he gives some kind of explanation to Tyr's behavior and what's going on in his mind, but doesn't really explain everything, even though I tried. But he does give Tyr a cool invisibility cloak as a bit of a reward for killing Alfira, I guess?
Your dreadful inheritance.
So next we attempted to help the Zentarim men trapped by the Gnolls, but during the interaction with the Gnolls, Karlach convinces the Gnolls not to attack us.
Power courses through you. Authority.
However, the Gnolls continue to attack the men in the cave. So, you know, being the good Samaritan clerics that we are, we decided we're going to go help the clerics. So we attacked the gnolls again. However, the men are not convinced that we're there to help them as well, so we end up having to kill them. So we decided to take the Iron Flask. We then kill the gnolls and the hyenas on the path towards the Burning Tavern, and then help Chancellor Floric and Baron escape the Burning Tavern, in which we reach level 4. This was going to be our first feat, and for Tyr, Gale, and Will, I gave them all ability improvements, increasing their wisdom by 2 points to 19. However, I increased Karlach's strength to 17 instead. So next we decided to investigate the Zentarium hideout. Don't know how I know it's there. So we get in without being blown up, which was great. However, we end up getting blown up because we opened the package and basically they want us dead. This was actually the first time I had to reload this game because I did not expect them to actually just, you know, straight up want to just blow everything up like that. So after obliterating our party and I had to reload, I decided to get the preemptive strike, have everyone up on the ledge, and basically do the same thing to them. Unfortunately, this means that we weren't going to be able to get any of the loot that they had. So next, it was time to go and confront the goblins. In the destroyed town, I managed to convince the goblins to let us through. And then I proceeded to get sidetracked in an area that I actually hadn't discovered before. I found these men who were confronting Auntie Ethel, but during the interaction I found something was not quite up, so I decided not to help her.
Auntie Ethel's face creases with false concern. You realize she's lying about seeing this girl, Mayrina.
The men decided to run off without wanting my help, in which I decided I will follow them because, you know, we're good Samaritan clerics, and then found that they were dead. After speaking to one of their dead bodies, I found that the sheep were a little bit suspicious.
Wasn't a sheep.
Using Tyr's talking to animals, we decided to talk to the sheep, but something still was quite suspicious. So we decided to straight up attack the sheep, which, you know, turns out they're actually just disguised bloodcaps. Because we had the upper hand, we knew what was going on. We quickly dealt with them and continued on to the tea house. In the tea house, we confronted Auntie Ethel, who had the sister there, and something wasn't quite right.
Grant me patience. Eat up, Mayrina. I won't say it again.
We didn't take her warning, and I was feeling pretty confident, so we decided to fight her. Turns out, obviously, she was a hag. I was pretty confident about the fight until she turned invisible, but luckily Tyr had this nature domain spell, Spike Growth, which I was able to cast on the battlefield, which revealed her location to us, which was quite useful. We then completely surrounded her with spiritual weapons and went to town on her, causing her to run away. So since we managed to scare her off quite easily, we thought, you know, we're just going to charge in straight after her. After we quickly fought and dispatched her followers, we managed to get past all the traps without getting blown up too much. At the bottom of the cave, I could see that the sister was still in the cage. However, I kind of knew if I tried to talk to her, this is going to start the boss fight. So I just thought, you know, I'm going to explore a little bit more just in case. I managed to do a lot of looting in the back room, get a few potions, get everything ready. We also found our way out in which we were able to long rest before going back in, so cheesed it a little bit. Once we came back in, we were ready to fight Auntie Ethel.
You want the girl so bad. Fine.
Auntie Ethel set the cage on fire, in which we used an ice arrow to put it out so we could fight Auntie Ethel without having to worry about the sister. During the fight, Auntie Ethel multiplies herself with different illusions, so you have to try and work out which one's what, which the spirit weapons are very useful for. And then we continue to use Guiding Bolt to do a lot of work taking her out. She tried the invisibility trick again on us, but Tyr's spell, Spike Growth, made quick work of that. After defeating the hag, we decided to go back to town. And then I found another area that I hadn't discovered yet, the well. After going down the well, we quickly went through, managed to kill all the spiders pretty easily, and then leave quite quickly. After we left the well, we confronted the goblins who were torturing the gnome on the windmill and decided to just straight up attack them.
Whoa, quick, get him!
Now, I was a little bit concerned with this fight because there was quite a few goblins there. However, Gale pretty much walked in, used Radiance of Dawn in his first move and caused them all to surrender by wiping out 3 of them.
Stop! I give up! For mercy, please!
It was on to the goblin camp. To my surprise, the goblins pretty much just let us walk straight to the door without any issues. So once we got into the camp, I was feeling pretty confident. We were quite strong. We've fought many things without much difficulty. So, you know, I thought I'd just pick a fight with a goblin. This fight took a little bit of time, but basically being able to summon spirit weapons and doubling our numbers along with the flaming ball, we were able to take out the goblins. So Guiding Bolt obviously being the next used spell, which did quite a lot of work for us, as well as Will's spell Shatter, which actually was quite helpful at taking out quite a few goblins who were standing quite close to each other. So after making quick work of all the goblins, it was next to go inside and continue to decimate them all. The next thing we had to do was fight the goblin priest, and we decided to just flat out attack them again. This one was a little bit more difficult because they pulled the statue down on us, but with these spirit weapons and Guiding Bolt, we made quick work of them yet again. Next we rescued Harslan. We walked out of the dens and decided to fight these goblins who were standing outside, which caused Mithara to come and fight us as well, which we made quick work of. After we killed her, we reached level 5, which allowed us to unlock Spirit Guardians. And this is pretty much when things get pretty freaking cool for the clerics. I was feeling extremely confident at this point, so we basically walked into Jorragzan's cave and started the fight. I made sure each character used Spirit Guardians and spiritual weapons to really bolster our numbers. Spirit Guardians is just so strong. Anyone who came close to our party just got dominated by it. Jorragzan tried to come in, but he just got absolutely obliterated. And then we just tidied up and cleaned everyone else up with Guiding Bolts. After we killed Jorragzan, we did a whole bunch of looting, tidied up any goblins that we might have left behind, and then went back to the grove to celebrate.
Everyone seems to be in haste.
So while we're back in the grove, I decided I'd buy everyone different dyes to, you know, stylize the characters up a bit, and ended up turning my entire party into the Power Rangers. And while we're here, I also heard from a friend that I should try and let Volo help remove the parasite from my eye. He didn't tell me what the outcome was, so I thought I'd give it a try.
He produces an ice pick,
in which Volo knocks Tyr's eye out.
Eye plops down into the mud.
However, he was nice enough to replace it with another cooler eye, which lets me see invisible people, so I guess it's a good trade. So it was now time to proceed through the goblin camp and into the Underdark. So we quickly fought and killed the ogre who was guarding the entrance to the Underdark. We completed the puzzle and continued down. While we're in the Sulina outpost, we did a long rest, and I found that the owlbear cub had come back and become a permanent resident of our campsite, and that the cub and Scratch were getting along. Very good friends. After looting the outpost, we climbed through the window, ran into the statue garden to fight the Spectator. This was actually a challenging fight, especially with the drow helpers. The Spectator took Karlach out pretty quickly straight off the bat, and put a lot of pressure on our health, but luckily mass healing was able to help us stay alive. Radiance of Dawn helped deal some good damage and take out one of the drows quite easily. Completely messed up Will's shockwave, but we won't talk about that anymore. And then Spirit Guardians and spiritual weapons, as you would expect, did quite a lot of work. Spirit Guardians is great because you can basically just like move towards the enemy. You don't even need to do an action in your turn. You can basically do damage to 2 different enemies in 2 different locations with Spirit Guardians as you just walk around the map. So pretty much at this point in the battle, I had 3 spirit weapons surrounding the Spectator, each doing a good chunk of damage to the Spectator's health. And this basically was what was able to help us win this fight quite easily. And then we just quickly wrapped up the remaining drow. As we continued on, Bullet almost discovered us. However, because the game went into automatic turn-based mode, we were able to sneak past it. It revealed itself down the bottom of the sledge, so we were able to sneak up onto it. And because we had the high ground and we attacked it and gave us a surprise attack on it, we were able to completely wipe the floor with it. It only had 1 round of attacks and it completely missed. So we were able to kill it without even taking any damage. So we continued on to loot and explore the Underdark. Then we came across the invisible Duergar, who was not invisible anymore because of Tyr's all-seeing eye. However, we decided not to attack them, and then we spoke to them. They didn't seem very happy with us being there, and so we retaliated with our weapons. So of course, Spirit Guardians was our opening spell, but Karlach couldn't get through this doorway because of Gale, so she did this badass move of jumping through the window. Everybody summoned spirit weapons, and along with Will's Shadow, were able to take a huge chunk out of the leader's health. We also summoned our first zombie to help with the fight. And just towards the end of the fight, the leader tried to turn invisible again, but we were able to use Spirit Guardians one more time to reveal his location and wipe him out. After we killed the Duergar, we continued to the Micronid's home and reported to the Sovereign that we killed the Duergar, which they wanted dead. We also agreed that we'd kill the leader across the river. The Sovereign Glut wanted us to show us the bodies of the Dwergo we killed, and after showing him, he asked us to help him overthrow the Sovereign. And we thought, nah, so we took out Glut. So before we crossed the lake, I wanted to explore some more of the Underdark. So we actually found another area of the map that I hadn't been before, and we started a fight with 2 Minotaurs. Now this was actually quite challenging, and I was a little bit concerned because both of the Minotaurs used their charge attack on us and did significant damage. Luckily we were able to kill one to get him out of the fight pretty early, but the second one took 2 of us out and had us pretty much on the ropes. We were able to kill him just before his next turn, which I reckon would have wiped us out. We continued to explore the Underdark and found the Hook Horrors and Filrow the Forgotten, which we took out pretty easily. So now it was finally time to cross the lake and save the gnomes. So when we got there, they believed us to meet members of the Absolute, but they continued to insult us, so I thought this would be a good time to pick a fight.
For brains.
Although this start had me a little bit concerned, as they managed to do some good damage to us straight off the bat. Plus, everyone in the whole area started making their way down to us, so I was a little bit worried. We managed to turn the fight around with Spirit Guardians and Spiritual Weapons and Mass Healing Word to keep everyone healed. After a little bit of a back and forth fight, we managed to kill them, and all the others that were making their way down to us just basically gave up, so I took that opportunity to take a long rest. So we ventured forth and spoke to Sergeant Thrym. My intention was to start a fight there and wipe them all out, but I ended up picking the wrong dialogue option and gave her back her boots, forcing Tyr to leg it around the barefoot because I had actually sold all the boots I had to the trader in the Micronid town. So at this point I thought it'd be best to try and help the gnomes by saving Nia and the gnome that was trapped inside. So we spoke to the gnomes who told us about their friend who had hit the explosives. We set out to find her friend and fought some slime monsters plus these random hellhounds and hellspawn. We quickly made our way to where their friend was hiding and convinced her not to blow us all up.
Shit. I can't do it.
We returned back to the cave-in with the explosives and blew it up. Neo came out and we confronted him with the intention to fight. However, I forgot to long rest and pretty much had no spell slots. Unfortunately, this fight was over before it started and we all died. So this was the second time that we unfortunately all died. After reloading, I ensured that we were all long rested before this fight. This was actually quite a challenging fight, even though we had long rested. Spirit Guardians helped just chunk the health of all the Dwergo who were surrounding us initially. And Spirit Weapons and Gale's Flaming Ball to help us balance the numbers, but things were looking rough for us at the end of the first round. All of us except Karlak had less than half health. Luckily, Mass Healing would help keep us in the fight for a little bit longer. We also are able to summon more zombies to help and even the odds. I used our minions to keep consistent damage on Nia, but by the end of the third round, things were looking rough again. Will was knocked down and Gal had been knocked into the lava, which made it impossible to save him. Eventually, I managed to get all their minions to gang up on Nia along with the Spirit Guardians to take out Nia, and I used all of our other minions to chase down the archers and take them all out. So after we'd won the fight, Gal had died in the lava, and there was no way I could get him out. And we had to revive him and prevent him going nuclear.
Station. That means I have prematurely perished.
I wasn't able to follow his secret revival methods, so I had to go to Withers to revive him, as I couldn't access Gal's body in the lava.
Oh, it's good to be alive.
We took Nia's head to the Micronids, who sang us a song in celebration. Then next we continued to the Grimforge. We made short work of the Methods, who appeared out of lava with Spirit Guardians and Gale's Radiance of Dawn, which, area of effect damage, just insane. After that, it was time to start making our first mithril item, which summoned the Grim. Now, since I'd done this before, the fight was actually quite easy. I knew exactly what to do and knew exactly what to expect. However, for some reason, after we beat the Grim, I wasn't able to make anything else out of mithril. That for some reason the game glitched and I wasn't able to continue the process. So unfortunately, after some time trying, I eventually gave up. And so we continued to wrap up a few loose ends around the area, and then we continued to Act 2. And that, everybody, wraps up Act 1. And now, to be honest, Act 1 has been pretty easy so far. Towards the end, there were some pretty difficult fights, and I've only had to reload twice. Compared to my first run when I first played Baldur's Gate, this is a significant difference. Honestly, haven't really been trying to avoid fights, and I've been doing everything. Now, there's two ways I could think about this. Because I've been attacking everything and I know what to expect, obviously it makes the game a little bit easier. I'm higher level because I've been attacking everything. So I think in the next act, just to add a little bit more challenge, we're going to up the difficulty to Tactician and see how that goes. Now, from what I know, Act 2 is harder than Act 1, so this could be a mistake overall. but I'm up for the challenge. So one of the first things I did before we continued on was respect everyone and change their ability improvement score and ensured everybody's left with even numbers. Because I found through the comment section on my previous video that leaving everybody on odd numbers or leaving your ability points on odd numbers doesn't do anything for your character unless you intend on upgrading it later. So I ensured to round everyone down to even numbers. And so in order to do that, I changed Tyr, Gale, Will, and Karlach's wisdom to 18 and constitution to 14. And just to throw it out, also ensured Gale was now worshipping Mystra, which obviously just makes sense for him. Thanks for pointing that out, comment section. Now, let's continue on this adventure. I decided that I'd go back through the mountain path. I actually hadn't gone through the mountain path on my very first run, so I wanted to see what was there. So we ran into Lady Esther, who wanted us to steal a Githyanki egg.
And once inside, you could simply purloin an egg.
We declined and said that we weren't going to let her do this because, you know, this doesn't really line up with what clerics do. So, you know, she attacked us. It was 5 against 1 because we had Scratch there with us, and, you know, it was a little bit cruel. We ended up using holds on her, and yeah, she couldn't do anything, and we just killed her. We looted her and then continued on our way. We went up this hill which was covered in repulse mines, and then we were attacked by these ghouls and a couple of death shepherds. Now at first I was a little bit cocky and I wasn't quite really mentally prepared for the fact that we're playing on tactician, and nearly lost the fight straight out of the gates because I wasn't paying attention and wasted a lot of time and concentration spells cancelling each other out, and I wasn't really focusing my efforts on attacking and killing the shepherds, so they kept reviving the ghouls on top of each other, which was really just stripping us down of our spell slots. I even messed up and got Karlach killed. Luckily, spirit weapons were able to save the day, and I had to use my first scroll to revive Karlach and bring her back to life. So I realized now that tactician was going to be a lot harder than what I'm used to, so couldn't afford to make any silly mistakes like this again. Next we explored some more and I ran into Elminster, who told Gale Mistra's plan for him.
I'm here on behalf of Mystra. The message and the charge I bring you are hers.
Which pretty much meant that he had to go nuclear and take out the Absolute. Next we ventured forth and found this lift. However, instead of taking the lift across the way, I decided to go underneath it, you know, just in case there was any cool loot to find along the way, but unfortunately we found nothing but this really annoying bird.
The drunk lizards they eat aren't hard to catch.
We then continued into the church where the Githyanki had established their creche. Instead of going through the front door though, we crept around the side and found a horde of drunk kobolds. With the upper hand, we attacked. Now our intention was to use some fire and attack this barrel and cause an explosion. However, there was actually a kobold inside of it, which unfortunately woke everyone up and started the attack. However, with spirit weapons and lots of fire, we managed to clean them up and move on. And we continued to explore the outside of the churches and found our way in. We walked into this room to find it full of not so invisible cats. Now thinking Tyr might be able to talk to them, I walked in, however they ended up attacking us. Now this was an interesting fight because they did strange things when we used magic, like spawn other big cats. Now I initially thought it might not be best to use magic, but the damage was kind of already done. The big cats were already spawned and I really needed to use some AoE magic to take out the numbers. Thankfully, we managed to take them out pretty easily, and then we harvested all their tails. Sorry, cats. We continued through the church and made our way inside. We walked into the Githyanki camp and Will stopped at the door.
State your purpose quickly.
Luckily, we were able to convince them that we're friendly and they let us through.
Very well. Perhaps Inquisitor Wargaz could use the aid of an adventurer.
We witnessed their training exercise and decided to accept their challenge. Our opponent surrendered before the fight, but we had to stab him anyway, though we did let him live. We continued to explore and met the Githyanki scientist / healer, Cristil. We told her about our tadpoles, and she said she could remove them if we sat in this janky thing.
It waits for something.
When we sat in the machine, it started to do its work, but things were not looking very good for Tyr.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
And then he couldn't escape. However, the chair suddenly exploded thanks to the stranger. Then we convinced Cristil we couldn't remember anything at all, and then she leaves us alone.
But I have no use for gibbering idiots. Leave me.
Next we met with the Githyanki Kithrak Therazin, who was really sus on us about the artifact.
Do you have it?
So we managed to dodge the conversation. I wasn't too sure if we could survive a fight against all the Gith in this building. So we promptly left and decided to start our journey into the Shadow-Cursed lands. When we first stepped through, we were greeted by a goblin who believed us to be true souls, and we were meant to be guided through the shadows. With torches in hand, we ventured into the darkness and met with the other absolute cultists. Apparently, we were meant to have something to summon the guide, which Mithara had on her.
Did you bring the lyre?
But honestly, I didn't really know what she was talking about, so we decided to leave it for the inn. Before going there, I knew it would be best to meet with the Harpers who were out on patrol, so we found them and helped them fight off the shadows. After helping the Harpers with the shadows, they led us into the inn where Jaheira greeted us. She was very sus on us, so we were forced to tell our story, and with Mole's help, we were let in.
He's the one who saved us!
After Karlach fangirled, we proceeded to sell a lot of stuff and buy everyone some new equipment and potions, plus some purple dye for Gale's armor. Gotta keep him fashionable. We long rested where we were met with Mizora, who asked us to rescue an asset from Moonrise Towers.
A devil, and a powerful one at that.
So we convinced her to release Will of his contract if we do. Halsin also told us a bit about the boy named Thaniel who was linked with the Shadow Curse. We then looted every piece of food and alcohol I could find in the inn, because as you know, we need as much food as possible on tactician long rests. We also ran into Raphael, who was playing chess with Mole, and had an unusual tendency to be invisible during the dialogue. After speaking with Jaheira, we went upstairs to talk to Isabel. Then Marcus appeared. We decided to protect our new cleric friend, and the combat started. Now, I knew this was going to be a tough fight, as I struggled with it in my first run. Although you can't necessarily fail it, I wanted to make sure that we protected Isabel. However, we did have one major problem. I actually didn't pay attention to the new armor that I just bought to Gale, and I didn't realize he couldn't use it effectively, which prevented him from using magic. So he had to embrace his inner wrestler and fight in his underpants. Luckily, they were pretty fashionable. Now, the ability to heal everyone with mass healing word was very useful at keeping Isabel alive, and we made great use of spirit weapons and spirit guardians. By the end of the first round, Marcus was on half health, so we're looking pretty good. On the next round, we used Turn Undead and all the spirit guardians to take out most of the ghouls that were up on the upper floor, threatening Isabel's life, which pretty much left Marcus on his own, so we all beat down on him. And then finished off the remaining flying terrors who were littered throughout the inn. After that fight, I immediately got Gale's old armor back and dyed it the same purple because, you know, gotta keep him fashionable. And then we upgraded Karlach's heart, which allowed her and Tyr to hug. Ah, so sweet. That night, though, we were met with Stellaris Fell again, who wished us to kill Isabel. Now, I for sure did not want to do that, so we told him to beat it.
Who knows who you might kill next if you do not satisfy your urge.
Next, it was time for us to ambush the absolute cultists, who were meant to guide us earlier. I went separately to the Harpers at first to see what I could do to disadvantage them. However, they weren't there for us to engage with. But I did realize that the object that we were meant to have was a lyre that Minthara had on it, and I had this in camp storage. I tried playing it at the location that we were meant to call the Guardian, but it no longer worked. So I figured the absolutists are probably already gone. So we went back to the ambush location and laid in wait. Once the convoy had appeared, I revealed myself to them and convinced them to drop the lantern.
If you will, we can have it!
Then immediately signaled the ambush. Cal used Misty Step to quickly get in there and pick up the lantern, and then we make quick work of the absolute cultist. However, the spider guy was quite annoying. We had to wait for his protection to go away before we could hit him, or hit him with AoE attacks. Unfortunately, he was able to kill Karlach, making this her second death, but we used Revivify to get her back into the fight, then proceeded to beat down on him. We released the pixie and got her blessing to enter the deeper area of the curse.
Trapped in that coffin with no one but a mad rider and my own farts for company.
And strangely, Will leveled up before everyone else. For his level 7, we made sure to give him Guardians of Faith, which basically will add another ally into the battlefield. Now, before we continue deeper into the Cursed Land, I wanted to make sure I had explored everywhere in the ruined battlefield. So we went into this abandoned house, and with Scratch assistance, we uncovered some buried treasure, and we continued to go under the house where we found the group of Meanlocks. I tried to sneak up on them to get the advantage, but Scratch gave us away, so we ended up having to fight them. After the fight, the remainder of the party leveled up and ensured everyone had access to Guardian of Faith. After that, we continued to explore, and I realized that I was down to one of my last lockpicks, so I was really starting to get worried about all these locked chests that we're finding. Basically, one of the downsides of not having a rogue or anyone with high dex in your party. This path led us to the cellar underneath the inn, and as you would expect, it was filled to the brim with booze. This will come in handy later. Once we had finished there, we went back to the inn and found Councillor Floric, who was going to head back to Baldur's Gate and ask for help. We also found this guy who was sleep singing and knew something about Thaniel, so we went and got Halsin. Apparently, we needed something further to help wake him up, which was located at the House of Healing.
We need it. Well done.
We set out to the ruined battlefield once more and fought these two groups of Shadow Curse roots, which didn't stand much of a chance against Gale's fireballs. We also long rested, and Will wanted to dance with Tyr. You know, Tyr's not really that interested in Will, so we had to witness the most gut-wrenching rejections I have ever seen.
Oh. I mean, yes, of course. The sun only rests for so long.
honestly, I have felt so bad for Will. We spoke to He Who Was, who asked us to find this journal.
Perhaps this one could assist us.
Then we fought the ever-annoying Measles who like to teleport people all over the place. Luckily, Tyr could see them because, you know, his invisible eye thingy. So that allowed us to have first strike, which gave us a huge advantage. Plus, Guardians of Faith made it hard for them to get the leash on us. They did manage to make off with Gale, so we chased them down and finished them off. Next, we crossed the bridge and went into the toll house and ran into Gerringoth Thorm. I somehow missed this on my first run, so I was actually quite interested to see how this would go out. We started the conversation with her, but that didn't really go any way positive, so we started the fight. Now, I was actually quite worried because she has a substantial amount of health, and she did kill Tyr in her very first turn and like literally just wiped him out. Karlach revived Tyr with a scroll and Gale banished her, so we could gather our strength again. Now, I thought that maybe the safe had something to do with the curse, but it turns out it only contained a single piece of gold, so that was a bit of a dead end. Gerringoth returned and killed Tyr again and brought all the skulls in close up. That made me realize that the skulls probably had something to do with her curse. So we'd used Turn of Undead, AoE spells, and spirit weapons to take them down as quickly as we could. After killing them all, her health had dropped significantly, so I threw absolutely everything I had at her, and then we managed to defeat her, although Tyr didn't really do too much for us in this fight. Afterwards, we found the shield, which worked perfectly with Tyr's spell, Shillelagh. Thank you, YouTube comment section. If you've enjoyed this video so far, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this by me, then subscribe to the channel. So I also remembered that I should probably go find Oliver. So we went to his house on the hill and played hide and seek. Unfortunately, we lost the game, but we did beat his shadow family anyway. With that squared away, we went to the bar to find Thizabald Thorm. Now, we refused to participate in his drinking game and decided to fight him instead. Will's Call Lightning and Spirit Guardians did some massive work on him, so we beat him pretty easily. After finishing off the remaining undead, we continued to the House of Healing. Along the way, we ran into Arabella, who was looking for her parents. We agreed to find them and went into the hospital, where we found Arabella's parents dead.
It's Arabella's father.
We continued inside to witness this doctor performing some surgery. Now, on my previous run, I actually didn't see this dialogue option, as I attacked straight away. So I was quite interested to see how this would go. Now, after some dialogue, he told us that he wanted to experiment on us. But luckily, being clerics, we knew a little bit about Sharon law, so he wanted the sisters to do some experimenting on us. We rolled a nat 20 and convinced him that he was the only one the sisters could perform their experiments on, as he was the only true worshipper of Shar in the room, which led us to this scene.
Come, sisters, soothe me.
Honestly, was not expecting that at all. We continued up the hill to the Temple of Shar. Before entering, Raphael appeared and asked us to kill the demon inside. We agreed since we were going in there anyway. Once inside, and after we managed to work out this very easy puzzle, we ran into this door, and my lack of lockpicks was really starting to stand out. So we tried to find other methods to get us through. However, Tyr accidentally stood on the trap, which set off all this shadow around us, which was slowly killing us. After some time fumbling through the shadows, we managed to block off the vents, which allowed us to live a little bit longer, while everyone who could lowered the 4 lamps in the corners, which seemed to make the fog disappear. So after this, we disarmed all the traps so this wouldn't happen again. Now, I'd spent too much time trying to work this out at this point, so I used one of Gale's fireballs to blow up the door. In the caves outside the temple, Tyr spotted the cloaker with his eye, so we attacked on it, giving us the advantage, and quickly killed it and moved on. We busted down the doors to the next room and found a swarm of rats surrounding a Shar shrine. Tyr talked to one of them and found out they were quite mean, so we attacked them. There were quite a few, but, you know, Spirit Guardians pretty much exterminated that rat problem. Another one appeared and begged us for forgiveness and revealed to us a secret cache. We continued on and was greeted by these undead who believed us to be true souls. Before we could meet with their master, we were attacked by Sharon ghosts. Now in this fight, these portals appear, which were super easy to destroy with Guiding Bolt. Though something strange was happening. Every time Tyr attacked one of the Sharon ghosts, he would take damage too, which did eventually knock him down. After we defeated them, we met with Balthazar, who commanded us to find the Night Song.
Clear the path for me by blade, cunning, or whatever it takes.
We agreed to, with the intention to betray him, of course. We pressed on deeper into the temple and saw the rats again. Now I thought they might have been leading us to the secret stash that we mentioned before, but apparently we followed them into their den, which pissed them right off. So we ended up having to fight a horde of rats. Now of course this was pretty easy. All the rats had 1 health and we had spirit guardians. All we had to do was walk around in circles and they would pretty much just die. After killing them, this Sharon Dark Justiciar spawned. Apparently he was divided into many rats. He wasn't very happy about being human again, so he wanted to fight us. After we killed him, we continued to explore the ruins. Now, I needed to top up on a long rest, so I took this opportunity to tell Arabella about her parents. She wasn't very happy to hear about this.
Get away from me! Go!
Next, we went deeper into the ruins and found the demon and his followers. We also found his pet displacer. Now, I did hear that you could turn the displacer against the demon if you went through the right dialogue with it. And after licking the spider, Gale wasn't too pleased about witnessing that.
If what is happening is what I think is happening, and it's because you licked a dead spider, the time might just have come when you and I should split ways.
We learned that the displacer was being charmed. We revealed this information to it, but failed the roll and it attacked us, initiating combat. This turned out to be one of the hardest fights so far. The displacer was hard fight in itself, and we had to fight it before the demon Yuga came into the fight. Now I was able to use Tyr's spiked overgrowth to block the way in, which luckily stopped Yuga from coming through and a lot of his Meragon followers. This allowed us to fight the displacer without too much of a problem. The displacer was tough and at one point did knock down Will and teleported him into the spike growth, which pretty much killed him. At this point, I thought it'd be best that we use potions of speed on Tyr and Gale, as I knew things were not looking very good for us. After some time, we managed to defeat the displacer beast since it tried attacking and teleporting the Guardian of Faith, what an idiot, which melted it, but we were not quite out of the woods yet. Yuga was still there and not passing the spike growth and become distracted by the Guardian of Faith, allowing us to kill most of the remaining Merigons. Luckily, most of them had tried walking through the spike growth, which halved their health, making it very easy for us to kill them. However, at this point, we're not doing too well and we're running very low on spell slots. We managed to revive Will and then start taking pot shots at Yuga. He did eventually jump over the spike growth and began to wreak havoc. He incapacitated Gale in one attack and finished Will off again. We used mass healing word to revive Gale and healed Karlach and Tyr once more, but on his next turn, Yugia knocked down Gale again. We revived Will once more and had Karlach get up close and personal. Will was knocked down again, followed by Karlach, leaving Tyr the only one alive. Things were not looking very good, and Yuga still had a quarter health left. Luckily, there were still 2 spirit weapons alive. One absorbed an attack, which probably saved Tyr from being targeted. The other one landed a crit on Yuga, bringing him down to 17 health. This caused Yuga to scatter the ground with explosives. Tyr shot the explosives, which brought Yuga down to 5 health, and to keep him safe, we used a potion of invincibility. While Tyr was invisible, Yuga did finish Will and Karlach off. Thankfully, because Tyr was invisible, he was able to get the advantage and managed to kill Yuga. Very stressful. After looting everyone, we continued to complete the 3 gauntlet trials, plus fought the Sharon ghosts in the library, and after that fight, we turned to level 8, giving us another feat. Now, I gave each member a different feat, just to mix it up a little bit, and experiment with different feats I hadn't used before. For Tyr, I gave him Warcaster. Gale, I gave him Magic Initiate, Wizard, to line up with his wizarding origins. Karlach, I gave Martial Adept, which I felt worked well with her War Domain background, and Will got Sentinel. At this point, we had all of the orbs, and we could use the lift to descend down further into the ruins and into the waters where the Night Song is. After we emerged, Balthazar appeared and we followed him down. Now, I know this to be one of the most challenging fights in the game. In my first run, it took me several attempts because they kept pushing my party into the abyss. So let's see how we go with a full party of clerics.
Your patron will not hear your prayers when I add you to my undying retinue, godling.
So I managed to get most of the party in the middle with Misty Step and managed to turn Balthazar away, which kept us safe from him for a couple of turns. However, Gale was pushed off by a skeleton, so he had to be revived, only to be put to sleep and incapacitated again. Will was able to make good use of Core Lining, Shatter, and Ice Storm, taking out large numbers of enemies. While Tyr and Karlach used Turn Undead and Spirit Guardians to take out the undead who had gathered in the middle of the map. Without too much difficulty, we beat Balthazar and the undead, although I really wish Gale could have had more impact in this fight, especially because he has a huge array of AoE spells. But oh well, we did manage to succeed. Once Balthazar was defeated, we released Nightsong, who charged towards the Moonrise Towers. When we exited the temple, Shadowheart confronted us, and she was not happy. Mainly because we did all of this without her in the party, and she wasn't very happy about missing out. So ultimately, she left the party, which was a little bit sad because, we like Shadowheart.
You would be wise to forget me.
I can only hope I one day forget you.
So next up, it was time to charge in the Moonrise Towers, but before I did, I wanted to make sure I squared a few things off. We gave He Who Knows the journal, and he performed his ritual on the dead halfling. During the ritual, we forgave her, which he wasn't really too happy about, so he attacked us. After beating him, I wanted to take the loot we found from Malice Storm to Halsin. When we got to the inn, we were greeted by Isabel. At this point, the urge was really trying to get us to kill her, but Tyr resisted the urge, and we continued to wake up Art Culloch, who informed us about Thaniel being alive.
Whenever I saw Thaniel, I always smelled lavender.
At this point, I needed a long rest, and Celaturus Fell appeared. He wasn't very approving that we didn't kill Isabel, and he said that while we slept, we were going to kill Will, who Celaturus thought to be Tyr's favorite companion. Technically, it would have been Shadowheart, but since she left us, so I guess Will was second pick, despite us heartlessly rejecting his advances.
I do not doubt you will act with a decorum befitting one of your rank. Good night, sweet lord.
After Celaturus Fell left, the urge really wanted us to kill Will, but we managed to resist the urge and do some great dice rolls and woke him up. We explained to Will everything that was happening, and he was very happy to help us. He tied us up when we passed out, and we managed to resist the urge. But does this mean that we've bested the urge? I guess we will see.
All control is gone.
When we woke, we had to protect Halsin as he fetched Thaniel from the dark, shadowy area. I still don't quite understand it. Now, this was pretty easy. We just got Gale to use a firewall on this side of the map, and pretty much all the enemies would run straight into it and burn themselves alive. Next, I explored a little bit more and made my way into the House of Healing's morgue. Fought the zombies inside and used some poison resist potions, Misty Step, and Scrolls of Flying to fly down to the pit, where we were attacked by some ooze and some armor. We pressed on after a long rest and found this shack by the water, where we were ambushed by a large group of cursed Kuatua. Thanks to all the AoE spells that we have, we made very quick work of them all. We then explored the Mason's Guild and fought the shadows and the secret cellars underneath. Now it was finally time to charge into Moonrise Towers. So after looting all the bodies on the way in, we charged in through the front door with all the Harpers. At the start of the battle, Gale set up a wall of fire and Tyr set up his spike growth to hurt any enemies that tried to advance on us. However, it had a bit of the opposite effect, as the Harpers would charge into the fire and to the spike growth themselves, which ended up killing a couple of them. We summoned spirit weapons, which helped tank a lot of the attacks, and used our own ranged spells to thin out the crowds before eventually turning off the wall of fire and spike growth and charging in ourselves. Now, this fight did take some time because there were quite a lot of enemies in the room, but we did eventually whittle down their numbers to this one person, and we all converged on her. Next, I wanted to explore and gather as much resources as possible. I made the mistake of heading downstairs to be jumped on by a large group of undead. I was very low on spell slots at this point, so it was a very risky fight, especially since the enemies kept spawning more undead, and they had fireball, which pretty much decimated us. However, we did eventually manage to beat them, although we were knocked down a couple of times. After this fight, I had to long rest because I could not fight Ketheric with no spell slots. When we long rested, we were invited to sit with Gale, which turned out to be a very platonic yet insightful night. After this long rest, we were finally ready to fight Ketheric. On the way up, we made short work of the cultists at the top of the tower, plus the Mimic, which left us all at level 9. Now we had some awesome spells like Mass Healing Word, Flame Strike, Wall of Stone, and Insect Plague. We charged to the top to fight Ketheric.
Bow, you dog.
I used Will and Karlach to Misty Step the Ketheric and keep him busy while Gale and Tyr fought everyone else. Once the undead were taken care of, the rest of the party collapsed on Ketheric, forcing him to flee with a massive tentacle. We then dived down the tower where the tentacle came from. We killed and freed Chop from his servitude and freed us from their cage. We fought the Death Shepherds and groups of winged horrors. Gale's flame wall was perfect here, allowing us to create a choke point, pretty much damaging anyone who tried to get anywhere near us. Most of the zombies died as they tried to walk through the flame wall. Once they were defeated, we set out to save Zevlor and released the Mind Flayers at the same time. Now, this was a big mistake. The Mind Flayers almost completely decimated us with their AoE attacks. Honestly, this fight was so tough, and had it not been for Zevlor, we probably would have died here. With Zevlor rescued, we saved Mizora, then found a small group of cultists. Now, I wanted to get the advantage on them, so we used Fireball and caught them by surprise. After blowing them up, it turns out they had a lot to do with the Dark Urge. It turns out Tyr was once a cultist. He was attacked by someone and then healed by the one he just helped kill. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions. It was now time to confront Ketheric one last time. We stopped Gale from going nuclear and started the fight.
I'll stand down.
Before they knew we were here, we snuck in. I had Gale, Tyr, and Karlach hide up on the side ledge, and while Will turned invisible to release Night Song, Aelin. Once she was free, we began our assault. Now stage 1 was pretty easy. Using our new AoE spells, we got past the first fight pretty simply. Once Ketheric had begun Merkel's projection, Karlach had a hard time staying alive, as she kept getting targeted every time she was healed. Gal and Tyr spent most of the fight on the ledge throwing fireballs and guiding bolts at Merkel, and Will's Call Lightning did some massive damage. Gal and Tyr eventually had to jump down to Merkel as he tried calling his undead to heal him. However, before they could, Tyr used Turn Undead, which stopped them in their tracks. And with one last epic attack from Karlach, Merkel was defeated. Well done, everybody. With Ketheric defeated, we caught up with everyone and witnessed Isabel and Aelin's reunion. Now, we had one last thing to do before we continued. We had to go and see Oliver and convince him to reunite with Daniel. We had to fight some more shades, but you know, this was pretty easy compared to killing a god. So that basically wraps up Act 2. And I gotta say, it's getting pretty easy. Having a lot of AoE spells under our belt means that we can take out a lot of enemies very quickly. We played Act 2 on Tactician, and although my team has died a few times, I haven't had a full party wipe requiring a reload just yet. The Clerics, with their wide array of spells, AoE spells, and like just mass damaging spells, is like just proving to be extremely useful. Probably the main reason why we're dying so much is just user error. Now I'm really excited to see how they do in Act 3, and I hope you guys are too. To continue where we left off, the Armen made camp just outside of Baldur's Gate to spend a peaceful night under the stars. Or so we thought. During the night, we were attacked by some Githyanki who appeared out of a strange portal. The Protector in our mind implored us to run through the portal. We managed to kill a few of the Githyanki and rush through the portal. We fought our way down to where we found a Mind Flayer who claimed to be the voice in our heads. We believed him and fought by his side. We eventually beat the Githyanki, but afterwards we spoke to the Illithid, who turned out to be the Guardian who was in our dreams and that he had free will. He was once an adventurer like us and became a Mind Flayer. His goal was to destroy the Absolute, and he needed our help, and had to change his form in order to trick us into believing him. He offered Tyr the ability to upgrade his Illithid powers and become half Illithid. Now, I already knew how good this was because I did this in my previous run, but I wanted to leave it up to chance. So I decided that I would do a dice roll to see if he would become part Illithid. So I was going to roll a d20 dice, and if it was going to be 11 to 20, it was going to be a no. And 1 to 10, it was going to be yes. And well, we got a 2. So Tyr became part Illithid.
Veritable feast.
Which I'm kind of pleased about because the ability to fly is freaking fun. Afterwards, I decided to see if anybody else in the party would be keen to go part Illithid. Now, I wasn't going to force it on them. It was still up to chance because we had individual dice rolls to do. However, we rolled some pretty amazing dice and everyone became part Illithid. So this was going to be awesome. I then upgraded Tyr to have the Displacer ability as I hadn't used it before and I was keen to see how it would work. Now that everyone was part Illithid, it was time to march onto Baldur's Gate and confront the Absolute and Elder Brain. After arriving in Rivington, we were confronted by Yenna, who was saying that she had lost her mother. Now, I'm not 100% too sure what she actually wants or what side quest lines up with her, what her whole deal is. And from my previous playthrough, I was pretty suspect of her being Oren, so I said she couldn't join our camp. We continued on and found the line to the Circus of Last Days. After convincing the doorman and his ghoul to let us in, we saw all there was to see, and even got ripped off by a djinn.
You dare speak to me as if we were equals? You are a scrap of food in my teeth.
We spoke to Zenthino, who did a love test on Tyr and Karlach, which Tyr completely aced.
You know me, don't you? It's wild.
However, it turned out that Zenthino was actually Oren, who had something to say about Tyr being related to her. We then watched Dribbles the Clown's act, who told some pretty average jokes.
Buddy the dog is my very best friend. Do you know why? Why? Because with him, anything is possible.
He then asked Tyr up on stage, so we got to see a weird cutscene of Dribbles talking to a pole in empty space. This was a pretty good magic trick. Dribbles then revealed himself to be an absolutist and attacked us.
Raise the absolute.
A few others joined in the ambush, and throughout the fight they revealed themselves to be doppelgangers. We decided it was probably time for us to leave the circus, as it was kind of spoiled for everyone. Nobody wants a circus where, you know, people get murdered. So we decided to continue on, and we found a shop where we were going to sell a lot of junk. We went back to camp to fetch our items, and Yenna was in there for some reason.
It's me.
So I told her to leave again. We spoke to Gendril, who was a member of the Gurs, and we also spoke to Ulma, who asked us to help slay the vampire Cazador and rescue their children. So we agreed to help. We continued to the Temple of Ilmater and found the father had been killed by someone. However, investigator Valeria claimed it was a refugee that killed him.
Case closed, Sister Yanis.
We kind of thought something didn't seem right, so we spoke to the father's body and confirmed that he was actually murdered by a dwarf dressed in red, and he was trying to protect the refugees. This also had something to do with secret cellars and passages underneath the church. After collecting some more evidence, we went down into the cellars. We dug around a bit and found a secret buttons which revealed a secret door behind the altar. Inside there were some suspicious types who were arranging body parts in a weird pattern. Turns out they were also doppelgangers and were involved in the murder of the father, and had a lot to do with a red dwarf. After this fight we turned level 10, which to be honest is a pretty boring level, except for getting divine intervention. Gotta save that for a rainy day. After looting this cave for all the food that we could find, we continued on. We went back to camp to rest up, and Yenna was once again in our camp, and I told her to leave once again. That night, this giant blue lady came to speak to us and wanted us to kill Prince Orpheus.
Who am I?
Although this is what Lae'zel wanted to do, we weren't going to do that. It was now time to try and get into Baldur's Gate. Last time I played, I took a more indirect approach, so this time I wanted to be a little bit more direct. Now I thought they were going to take us straight to Gortash, however they locked us up instead.
Your peaceful surrender has been noted.
Luckily there was a talking skull in the cell with us, who said he would get us out if we answered some riddles. So with Tyr's cunning, we answered the riddles all correctly. However, that's where his cunning ended. Only Tyr was teleported out of the cell, and he's not a very sneaky cleric, and there was a guard who was just about to walk down the hall. Tried to hide Tyr as best I could. I even panicked and picked up everything that was in the chest, which made him encumbered, so he pretty much had no chance of getting away, and the guards spotted him. This obviously initiated combat, with everybody else still locked in the cell. However, luckily because I picked up everything from the chest, the lockpicks were still transferable through everyone's shared inventory, so everybody else was able to lockpick their way out. The only problem is that Tyr had everybody's weapons with him, so we had to waste a couple of turns on transferring all the weapons into everyone's inventories. Now the fight wasn't too hard, however there was this one mage who kept using counterspell on us, making using our spells a little bit annoying. After we defeated the guards, we rescued Floric and convinced her to not give up hope. We guided her out of the prison where nobody really noticed that just escaped, and we also received an invitation to Gortash's inauguration, which was also strange considering we were just locked up. So we went upstairs and confronted Gortash in the main hall, who revealed to us that Tyr was in fact a child of Bar, and was the one who originally came up with the absolutist plot, and worked along with Gortash until Orin messed him up. He also told us that there was a doppelganger in our camp. Now, we weren't going to survive a fight with Gortash right now, so we agreed to help him kill Orin and continued to witness his inauguration.
For Gortash, the council appoints you Archduke of Baldur's Gate.
Afterwards, Mizora told us that Will's father had been taken away and imprisoned, although she wasn't going to tell him unless there was a deal involved.
And to think, there's no way to save him. Or is there?
We long rested and found that Yenna was once again in our camp. I once again asked her to leave. I still think she may be the doppelganger, but I did check every other camp member just to be sure, but honestly I can't tell who the doppelganger. The next day we continued to explore Worm's Rock and the Bridge. We went to Dantilon's Dancing Axe and sold some gear, then followed up on Jaheira's request to meet the other Harpers. When we met with the Harpers, we noticed something was strange with the lead Harper, and after doing some mind reading, we found that they were imposters.
Me. Study me. This Harper's face bores me.
We attacked and made quick work of them and found out they were all doppelgangers, and that the Harpers had been compromised.
Thank the gods. You're the first friendly face I've seen in days.
We then went to Sharess's Caress to show Investigator Valeria more evidence on the case of the murdered father, but they wanted more solid evidence. So we went across the street to Frego's board house to investigate the Red Dwarf some more and get some more evidence. And then we ran into some very flirty vampires who invited us to a party.
Hello, beautiful. I didn't see you there.
Anyway, we found the Red Dwarf's secret room and found some solid evidence that he had been killing in the name of Baal. We then took the evidence to Valeria, who tells us to find Devella and help her with the case. It's now time for us to make our way to Baldur's Gate. Once we were in Baldur's Gate, we had to sort out our lodging. We rented a room in Elfsong Tavern and found out about the murder that occurred upstairs. We met with Devella, and after we told her what we found in the Church of Ilmater, she asked us to help investigate the murders further, which we agreed to. We then went into our room and found that Yenna yet again was in our camp. We told her to leave yet again. We then informed Jaheira about the doppelgangers and the Harpers. She then told us about Minsk and asked us to help find him. She suggested that we speak to Nine Fingers for more information. We went downstairs and warned the chef about the murderer trying to get him, and then continued down to the cellar to clear out the rats and find the Emperor's hideout. The rats were pretty simple. Using spark growth, we stood around and, pretty much let them kill themselves. However, when we ventured further into the hideout, we stumbled upon a Githyanki, and this was a tough fight. To start things off, I used Gale to get a good opening fireball and do some good initial damage, and luckily we were able to start the fight with only 2 of the Gith noticing the fireball. so we were able to get some damage into them before the remainder of the group joined the fight. Using Flame Wall and Stone Wall, I created a choke point that would damage the fighters as they came closer. However, I stupidly summoned the Flaming Ball, which cancelled Gale's Firewall. Then I proceeded to make the same mistake with Tyr cancelling his Stone Walls to summon a Vine. Dumb. On our next round, one of the Gith had gotten into Karlach's face, so she squared off against them along with the spirit weapons. Using Tyr's Displacer Form and Will's AoE spells, we managed to cull the numbers down quite significantly. After the Inquisitor was dead, only 3 remained. We were on the ropes, but everyone used Healing Word, and we got Gale away from the fight so he could survive at least one round. Then we got in and finished them all off. After we looted and investigated the area, we continued through to a path that led to the sewers, where we ran into Lae'zel, who had just gotten away from Orin, or so we thought. We soon found out that Lae'zel was in fact Orin trying to trick us. She asked us to betray Gortash and then duel her to the death. That night when we rested, we were greeted by Mizora, who offered Will information on the whereabouts of his father, provided that Will signs the contract with her again. Will agrees, and Mizora tells us that Gortash has Will's father in the underwater prison.
Do it then. Claim my soul for Zariel. Keep my father safe.
When we slept that night, we awoke to the company of a very suggesting emperor. He was a little bit too keen on Tyr, so Tyr had to reject him.
Sorry, you're right. Now's not the time. Forget I said anything. Let's move on to more important things.
I didn't really feel that bad about this rejection. Now that we had finished off the business with the Emperor, we set out to the streets once more and found our way to the wine festival, where we found the wine had been poisoned by none other than the red dwarf we were hunting. We called him out and he said his doppelgangers after us, and then he ran away, coward. After beating them, we ventured further into the city and ran into Aradin again, who had just been kicked out of Sorcerer's Sundries. We told him about Night Song, but refused to let him take her, so he threatened to capture her, although I'd like to see him try, so he could take her to Lorroakan for a reward. We went inside to try and find information about the crown, but also to see what Lorroakan wanted with the Night Song. We spoke to the librarian, who mentioned there were some tomes that had information locked away somewhere, so we figured we should speak to Lorroakan and try and work out a deal. We made our way to him and found out his intention was to use Night Song to make himself immortal, just as Ketheric Thrawn had done. Now, we weren't going to just let this happen, which he wasn't too happy about, so he attacked us.
Then again, perhaps word of your agonizing death will draw your little friend to me.
This fight was a little tricky because he had a group of elemental myrmidons to fight by his side. He even took Gale, Karlach, and Tyr out, but he was no match for Will's AoE spells and Mass Healing Word. We killed Lorroakan and gotten down to the last of his followers. However, it fell off the map, so we had to fly down to the lower level and finish it off. Afterwards, we continued to explore the tower and found a secret area where all the treasure was stored. We managed our way through all the traps that were in place and found a lot of cool loot. And we also found the book that had the information we needed for the crown.
Annals of Karsus.
We gave the book to Gale, who spoke of using the crown to become a god himself, but we told him to chill out.
You're right. There aren't many wizards who'd care to be mentioned in the same breath as him. Or his folly.
Now that we'd finished here, it was time to leave. We went to the Stormshore Tabernacle to buy some revival gauntlets for Tyr, and found the statue of Mystra was glowing. Gale realized that this was a message that Mystra wanted to speak with him, so he opened himself up to Mystra and disappeared to speak with her in private. She revealed to him that the magic in his chest was a new version of the weave, which was created by Karsus when he failed to become a god, and it was basically a black hole of magic.
It was the Karsite weave.
Mystra promised to cure Gale of it if he brings her the crown, which we all agreed we would do. We then continued on the trail of the Red Dwarf, and went into the Facemaker's boutique, where we found the Red Dwarf had paralyzed his next target and was about to kill him. Devella was there too and was also paralyzed. However, we couldn't really save her in time. We were able to kill them all pretty easily, despite the dwarf having a bajillion attacks in one turn. We rested, and the next morning Mizora wanted to speak with Tyr, so we had a chat and found that Mizora was a little bit thirsty for some Tyr, so they agreed for a secret meetup.
Smile, and I'll come to you when you put your head down to rest. I will sate your most forbidden lust.
It was now time to find Ninefingers. We continued to Ninefingers' hideout and convinced the security guard to let us in. However, I tried to leave the area again prematurely, which they weren't going to let us do, so unfortunately we had to kill them. On the body of the orc, we found this ring, which led us into the secret hideout. Before we entered, I thought it would be best to long rest. Mizora was waiting for Tyr, and well, things got hotter than the hells themselves. The next morning, eyebrows were raised, especially Will's.
Countless souls walk these plains, countless ways to find pleasure, and out of all of them,
You chose her.
Poor Will. Rejected for the devil that owns his soul. Anyway, after entering the hideout, we spoke to Nine Fingers with Jaheira. Nine Fingers gave us some information on Minsk, but also said that he'd been converted by the Absolute and was now the Stone Lord. Nine Fingers said she was going to hunt him down and kill him, so we decided we had to get to him first. We spoke to a drunk dwarf and found out that Minsk was planning a heist on the bank, so there was where we were headed. In order to get through the Minsk, I thought it'd be best to bring Jaheira with us, so I respec'd her into a knowledge domain cleric and replaced her with Karlak. Unfortunately, I didn't have much good equipment left, as I had sold most of it throughout the travels, so I gave her some random armor I had in storage, plus bought a flail and shield for her to use. We also discovered something in my inventory which gave us all enough experience to push us to level 11, which gave us access to level 4 spells. I gave Will Blade Wall, Gale Create Undead, Karlak Hero's Feast, and Tyr Planar Ally. We entered the bank and told them something bad was going to happen in the vault, so they let us down. We continued through and completed the puzzle and confronted Minsk, only to find another Jaheira had him fooled. They quickly fled, leaving Baal cultists behind for us to fight. The armed men and women made quick work for the Baalists, and we found that Minsk and the fake Jaheira had made for the sewers. We raided a couple of the vaults and found some pretty cool items and then long rested. That night some vampires had come from Astarion, but we told them that we couldn't have him with our fist, and they left. The next day we went to the sewers in pursuit of Minsk. We defeated the cultists and their murder of crows who were guarding the entrance and charged through to the main gate to confront Minsk. This was a really fun fight. Tyr summoned a Jinn and Gale summoned a mummy before we entered the fight, and along with spirit weapons, we had a massive group of allies with us. Tyr used his Displacer Beast form to displace the enemies and really mess them up. And I also got Jaheira to use Dominate Person on Minsk so he would fight for us. Then got her to use Sanctuary, so it would be hard for the enemy to attack her and break the concentration. With all our extra helpers, we managed to dominate them. However, I did unfortunately let the traitor get away. Towards the end of the fight, we switched our weapons from kill to stun and knocked Minsk out. We convinced the Emperor to protect Minsk from the Elder Brain, and Minsk was finally himself again. Well, once he got his hamster back, that is. Now before we continue on, if you've enjoyed this video so far, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos by me, subscribe to the channel. Now that we had rescued Minsk, we went back to Nine Fingers' hideout to find the Zentarium trader was there, who had been planning to ambush Nine Fingers. Unfortunately, we didn't stop her from giving the signal, so we had to help Nine Fingers defend the hideout, which is a pretty trivial fight. Once we succeeded, we secured Nine Fingers as an ally for the final battle. Now that the Nine Fingers and Minsk business was taken care of, we decided to confront Cazador. For this, I thought it would be best to take Astarion with us in place of Karlak, so I made him a trickery domain cleric. Luckily, I had some armor and greatsword for him to use that I found in the bank. We waltzed into Cazador's manor, and after beating the skeleton, we got the signet ring that allowed us entry into the main hall, where we were confronted by all manner of beasts. I thought this was a vampire lair. Anyway, after killing all of them, we proceeded down to the lower levels. We spoke to the skull who gave us a scroll and with all the information about the ritual Cazador was planning to use. With that information, it was time to fight Cazador. However, I wasn't going to bring Astarion with me. If you take Astarion, he just gets captured and you have to kill Cazador with a time limit, so there's no point bringing Astarion into the main fight. Before the fight, ensured everyone summoned planar allies and had them all into the fight with us, obviously without Astarion.
And the immortal Cazador, and you will be mine.
Now, it was a tough fight against Cazador, but with all our extra allies and AoE spells, we managed to defeat Cazador pretty easily. We then invited Astarion down to finish Cazador off. However, we didn't properly convince Astarion not to go through with the ritual. So after he killed Cazador, he destroyed the Cazador staff, which meant we couldn't release the vampires, and Astarion left.
I'm done with this. And I'm done with you.
Next, it was time to do something about Gortash and the Steel Watch, so we made our way over to the docks. We found Volo, who was about to be blown up by some absolutists, so we rescued him, which leveled us up to level 12. Level 12 gave us our last feat. I gave Tyr Shieldmaster, Gale Spell Sniper, Will and Karlak both got Warcaster. Next, we decided to break into Gortash's Steel Watch factory. Unfortunately, I used up all my lockpicks trying to get in, so we had to try and find other methods. Luckily, there was a lot of explosives on the cart nearby. We moved the barrels over one by one, and the Steel Watch quickly came to investigate, so we had to fight and demolish it. We continued on and killed the other Steel Watch and waltzed into the factory, where we convinced the followers of Bane that we were there to relieve them.
The relief crew was due hours past. Your tardiness will be noted, dread brother.
We then went further into the back office and spoke to Tubin, who told us that he and the other Gondians could help us destroy the Steel Watch if we rescued their family in the underwater prison, which we're going to go to anyway. So that's where we headed next. Although I found that we couldn't get to the factory due to us not having lockpicks and the doors being indestructible. So we had to find another way in. Luckily, there is an entrance located through the sewers up this route. Once inside, we found the dwarf who was the captain of the submarine. and we convinced him to take us down. On our way down, Gortash wasn't pleased with us and threatened to activate his countermeasures in the underwater prison. We pressed on, determined to save everyone. When we got there, Gortash had set explosives off, which caused the place to begin to flood. So we had a limited time to rescue everyone, which included Will's dad. Before we started, I had everyone who could summon a planar ally and entered. Now, I have to be honest here, this was one of the only times I actually saved scummed in this playthrough. On my first attempt at doing this, I managed to save everyone but one Gondian, which I wasn't at all pleased about. So I tried a couple more times to save that one Gondian. I figured, considering like that one person wasn't going to affect the storyline because I saved everyone major anyway, it was not that big a deal to save Scummin. Each other attempt I tried, 1 or 2 people unfortunately got killed or something bugged out and someone got stuck. But eventually we managed it, and this is how we did it. At the start, I had everyone use potions of speed and use dash and fly to get everyone around the map. I used our summons to deal with the enemies at the immediate entry. I had Will go and save his father, Karlach and Gal go and fly off to save the Gondians in the mass holding cells and fight the 2 enemies there. Tyr went to save the 2 being tortured along with Omenium, and I had also summoned a mage hand to release the Gondians in the central hall. On the second round, Will, Karlach and Gal had killed their enemies, leaving them free to release the prisoners, also allowing Karlach to cast Sanctuary on herself to fly and collect the treasure. Now there is a little bit of a glitch here that allows you to fly over walls and into the cells with the treasures in it, so keep that in mind. Tyr was able to save the Gondians and Omelium. After that, everyone was pretty much free to escape. I used the summons to hold back the spawning enemies and shut the doors on the other side to prevent anyone coming through the treasure side. And after all that, we managed to rescue everyone and get all the treasure. Afterwards, we witnessed Will and his father reunite, and everything was explained. The Duke forgave his son for everything and told us about the dragon sleeping underneath the Worm's Rock. And now that we'd saved the Gondians' families, we can now help the Gondians in the Steel Watch factory and destroy it, disabling the Steel Watch. We entered the building, and as soon as we did, the Gondians started attacking. We summoned our planar allies and joined the battle. Everyone was grouped together, so our AoE spells made huge impact. We also used Protect from Death on Tubin in order to secure his help in taking out the Steel Watch. Along with everyone's help, we dealt with these guys pretty easily. Next we went inside with Tubin, having to fight some more of Gortash's followers and more of the Steel Watch. With our large array of AoE spells, Healing Word, plus planar allies, spirit weapons, Guardians of Faith, and all the other helpers, we had more than enough help to defeat the enemy pretty easily. Now we had to go deeper into the factory and destroy the Steel Watch. And in order to do that, we had to destroy the Steel Titan. At first, I was a little bit worried as we were down a few spell slots, but luckily Tyr had a few left, so I made him a dedicated healer. Had him cast Sanctuary and Beacon of Hope on himself, giving his spells maximum healing. We focused on taking out the Hellfire Watchers first, and after dealing with them, the Titan was pretty easy to finish off. Now, the Steel Watch seems pretty intimidating, but all you need to do is take down 3/4 of their health before they start to self-destruct, so it's not too bad. Once we destroyed the Titan, Tuba did his thing and blew up the factory, which meant no more Steel Watch. So now it was time to go to Gortash. But on the way to Worm's Rock, I wanted to stop at Devil's Feet and see what items they had. Here we found out from Helsik that her and Tyr used to work with each other, and she used to create portals into the Hells for us. And in fact, this is how we stole the Crown of Karsus. I thought this was interesting, and asked if she could get us into the House of Hope. Now originally she was going to charge us 20k gold for this. Yeah, we couldn't really afford that. So she agreed to give us a portal there, provided we steal some special gauntlets for her. She gave us the ingredients for the portal, and after we completed the ritual, we teleported to Avernus, into the House of Hope. When we first entered, we were greeted by the projection of a halfling named Hope. Was this her house? Who was apparently imprisoned in the House of Hope. Wait a sec. And wanted us to help her escape, although she did seem a little bit loony. We agreed to help her, but we would need to steal the Orphic Hammer to do so. Hope disguised us all as commoners, and we explored the halls of the House of Hope. We spoke to a few of the trapped souls, but didn't really get much information out of them. I then found this gem on the wall, and after a few failed attempts of opening it, we managed to get into the secret treasury behind the wall, which contained some pretty epic items. We also found this door to Raphael's chambers, but there was clearly a barrier that would stop us from entering. So we looked around and found this back way in. Luckily, we could fly and easily find a way through the back window. When inside, we saw the sleeping Cambion. Luckily, we had a spell Planar Binding, which allowed us to control the Cambion. We then explored some more and found this hidden button. Unfortunately, when we pressed it, a wave of imps descended on us. Sliding on the imps was annoying because they kept flinging us around. Luckily, we could use our AoE spells to wipe them out. However, we were now left to deal with a Cambion, who kept turning invisible every time we hurt him. The fight took longer than we would have liked. After we beat him, we found some special bath taps that healed us like a long rest, which was perfect. We looted the Cambion and found a safe key, and opened the secret safe the button revealed. Inside, we found Raphael's notes, which also included his secret password to give us access to the hammer. After looting his room some more, we left the secret room and made our way to the archive, where the loot was being held. We spoke to the archivist and convinced him that we were there to inspect the magical items. I figured that now was a good time to steal the loot we needed. Unfortunately, I didn't notice the pressure pads the treasure was on in time, and we set off the alarm. Things were about to go down.
You have what you wanted, but you cannot leave lest all hells break loose.
When we left, flaming balls had spawned in the hallways, and all the trap souls had become hostile. We quickly ran through the hallways, only fighting when necessary, and found the secret hole in the ground near the shortcut to Raphael's room. This hole in the ground led to Hope's prison, where she was chained up with 2 spectators and a bunch of imps guarding her. Now this was a tricky fight, as I had to position our team so the imps wouldn't knock anyone off the edge. Although Will was killed, we managed to kill the 2 spectators pretty well with Gale's AoE spells. Honestly, Destructive Wave is a S tier spell. Despite my best efforts though, Gale was blown off the edge of the map. After we killed the second spectator, we finished off the imps and released Hope from her chain.
I never thought I would be believed I could be.
She offered to help us escape, but she was not sure we're going to make it out alive, now that Raphael was coming for us.
That's the hopeful version, of course. The likely version is that we are the messes and he is the chopper. Onwards!
After leaving, I finished off all the enemies in the hallways. Then went to the magic taps of Long Rest one last time. Before we were making our way to the exit, I had everyone summon a Jinn planar ally, as I found them to be the most useful in this area. I thought we might have had a chance to escape, but I was wrong, and Raphael met us at the door. But we weren't going to grovel at his knees. We were the Almen, holy clerics destined to smite the devils from existence. Raphael was a strong devil, but we shall prevail. Raphael had a lot of help. A half-dozen Cambions, his assistant Corilla, and the devil we'd already slain once before, Yuga. This was a very tough fight, mainly because the sheer numbers of strong enemies we had to fight. Though the Jinns were a great help in this fight because they had Burp Spell and Shockwave, which were great AoE spells. For the start of this fight, I wanted Tyr to be the primary healer, so I cast Sanctuary on himself to keep him safe, while everyone else did their best to fight the Cambions. Unfortunately, I made a dumb mistake and wasted Karlach's Divine Intervention casting the Radiant Damage version, forgetting that Raphael's protection would reflect all the damage on her. Although it might have done a good chunk of damage to everyone, it did get her knocked down. On Tyr's next turn, I cast Beacon of, which allowed all his healing spells to have mass effect, while he was also protected by Sanctuary. This would ensure he would stay alive. We managed to work down the Cambions mainly with Will's Destructive Wave, Shatter, and Cold Lightning. Gale had a very hard time staying alive as Yuga and Raphael kept focusing him, keeping him dead. Although this did allow the rest of the team to fight without taking huge amounts of damage. Eventually I was able to kill most of the Cambions and Imps, leaving Yuga alive. This is when I realized the importance of the 4 pillars in the edge. I had Karlach and the Jinn go and destroy them. The Jinn were perfect for this as they could use Shockwave and significantly damage them, and then use Teleport to the next one. Hope was also super handy with her healing spells. I managed to get Gale alive and have a turn before getting killed again to allow him to cast Sanctuary on himself and be protected. Gale finally finished off Yuga with Destructive Wave, leaving Raphael alone, though he still had pretty much full health. Things were not looking very good, and we were low on spell slots, and half the party had less than half health. Hope was unfortunately killed, leaving us up shit's creek. I even had Karlach and Tyr turn into Displacers to teleport Raphael around to try and do as much damage as we could. However, this wasn't enough. Raphael killed Gale, Will, and Tyr, leaving Karlach on her own. And Raphael still had more than half his HP left. Although, something miraculous happened. Karlach still was able to use her Divine Intervention. I'm not sure why, but maybe the gods really wanted Raphael dead. So she used it and brought everyone back to full health and full spell slots. Raphael was screwed. Everyone summoned a new group of Jinns, Spirit Weapons, Guardians of Faith, and we cornered the devil and smited him down with everything we could throw at him. And with one last cast of Destructive Wave, Raphael was done. We looted his corpse and got some fantastic armor for Tyr. With that taken care of, we left Avernus, leaving a trail of devil death and destruction in our wake. I didn't intend on giving the gloves to Helsik, so I kept it on Karlach and we left to finally confront Gortash. When we got to Worm's Rock, we fought the annoying Flaming Fist who manned the gates at the front door, then decided to take the long way around Gortash's tower to avoid Gortash's men in the main hall. We then walked in and confronted Gortash. After slaying a devil, this would be an easy fight, right?
You can't escape me! Wherever you go, I'll find you! Wherever you run, there I'll be!
With a string of unfortunate rolls, we all got blown up in his first attack. We were left pretty much all dead, and Gortash and his men demolished us. So again, we confronted Gortash. This time, I was mentally prepared. This time I split everyone up as early as possible to ensure we didn't get blown up right away. Will was deleted by Gortash on the first turn, but luckily it was only Will. I had Tyr use Sanctuary of Hope, which is what I will now call Beacon of Hope combined with Sanctuary, so that he could keep everyone healed. I focused on killing Gortash's followers with Will and Gal doing their best with AoE damage to everyone. Karlach focused on trying to wither down Gortash. We eventually killed Gortash's followers, allowing everyone to bear down on Gortash himself. And with Tyr being dedicated healer, Gortash didn't stand a chance. We all surrounded him and beat him to a pulp. We had just killed Gortash, but Karlach was still sad. She realized that she was still probably going to die. We gave her some time and long rested. We came back and spoke to her, and she was in high spirits despite everything, and was keen to keep adventuring. It was now time to awaken the dragon in Worm's Rock. We went into the prison, and after I figured out the puzzle, we went into the Dragon Way. We continued further in, and were tasked with solving a selection of puzzles to gain us entrance into the chamber where Answer was. I attempted to work out the first puzzle here with the paintings, but I couldn't really work it out, so I figured I'd come back to it. I had a look into the next room with the flying books, and I couldn't catch them, and none of the other books really held any information on answers on who I needed to choose out of the 3 potential betrayers. So we continued to move on, and then the next one was a game of chess. Surely this would be easy. However, despite Gale's help, I stuffed up the moves and we failed the test completely, spawning groups of undead for us to fight. Luckily, we were clerics, and the undead were no match for us. After defeating the Skellies, we were still able to gain access to the Dragon Slayer, so I guess slaying all the Skellies still proves us worthy of Answer's help. As we entered the tomb, we found out the dragon was dead, and just a pile of bone. As we neared, its spirit came to life and spoke to Tyr, although it wasn't actually speaking to Tyr, it was speaking to the Emperor, as if he knew him. The Emperor appeared, and the dragon called the Emperor Baldur.
Your presence has stirred me, as it ever did.
Which means that the Emperor was Baldur, the very person who founded Baldur's Gate. We found out that the Emperor betrayed the dragon, and now the dragon wanted us dead. The dragon's bones rose to life, and we had a huge fight on our hands. I was not prepared for this fight at all. We had no spell slots, we were grouped very close together, and we did not last very long. This was one of the hardest fights I've had to fight so far. My next attempt, I had long rested and had everyone spawn our helpers. However, I didn't ungroup us before the fight, which meant the dragon could wipe us out again with his huge AoE spells. The biggest issue was a dragon could use an attack of opportunity, casting his lightning breath once per turn if someone attacked him, making it very hard. So the next time I spawned a group of Jinn to help us and ensure everyone had protection from energy lightning cast. I started the fight ensuring everyone was split up. He could only damage one of us at the time. I ensured that everyone kept protection of energy active. We were able to kill his Myrmidon helpers and slowly whittle his health down with our spells. I stopped using healing word on everyone and prioritized using potions on everyone who needed healing. That way we could keep our spell slots active. We had a steady strategy at this point, slowly working him down until we reached the point that he started charging his energy. When this happened, I ensured everyone hid in the bottom room at the bottom of the map or at the top of the stairs behind the entrance, which negated any damage. I also found that the Jinn were immune to lightning damage, so I ensured that they would teleport really close to the dragon, out of range of everyone else, and draw out the attack of opportunity so they could tank the first attack. Eventually, we defeated the dragon, which was extremely satisfying. Afterwards, we found some great loot, an awesome sword and helm for Karlach to use. After leaving the rock, it was time to take on Orin. We got past the skeleton guard and spoke to Sevarok, who explained to us that Tyr was once the very best of the Baal spawns, and Baal's favourite child. Yet we were blind to Orin's uprising, who betrayed us and overthrew us, scrambling our mind at the same time. We proved ourselves to be an unholy assassin of Baal, and Sevarok led us into the ritual room, where Valeria was chained up to be slain. But we chose not to slay Valeria, and decided to attack Sevarok instead. Sevarok is a pain because he had so much protection buffs and self-heals, but it wasn't too hard. Us holy clerics wouldn't be defeated so easily. We received the Amulet of Baal and continued into the sewers to the Baal Temple. We made our way to the Baal Temple and entered the ritual grounds where the Baal followers are tested. Luckily, we were able to thwart the ambush set up for us and kill the Baalists at the top of the rock by flying to them and got into the face of the Baalist spirit that was testing us. Once we killed him, we were free to confront Orin. We long rested and made our way to Orin, where Celaturus Fel was waiting to let us into the temple. We confronted Orin and convinced her not to kill Lae'zel, and now it was time for our one-on-one duel with Orin. And let's just say, Tyr is truly the strongest child of Baal. Tyr had his Jinn and spirit weapon to help him. He also had a ring that healed him at the start of each turn, which also triggered Blade Ward to increase his defenses. With the Guardian of Faith, Spirit Guardians, Tyr's never-ending health, he never went below 94 HP, and made Orin look like a joke. After the fight, Baal wanted to speak directly with Tyr, and sacrificed Celaturus Fel to do so. He offered Tyr to become his new chosen, but Tyr was no longer influenced by Baal, and he refused. Baal was not happy about this and took his blood back from Tyr, which unfortunately killed him.
Make another who is worthy.
Now, I legit thought this would be the end of Tyr, but thankfully Withers had other plans. He revived Tyr, as he had challenged Baal and became a champion. This meant that Tyr had defeated the Dark Urge and was a free man.
So rise, challenger of gods, and prepare for battle once more.
Now that that was taken care of, we had the 3 crystals, and it was finally time to confront the Elder Brain. We rested, then set out on our final mission. We entered the sewers and travelled forth to the underground docks. We fought and killed a swarm of mine rats, rested one last time, and set out. Our boat was destroyed, and once we landed, we pressed on, fought the group of intellect of ours, then continued to confront the Brain. Unfortunately, we couldn't control the Brain despite a nat 20 on the final roll. The Emperor rescued us and took us into the prison. Turns out the Brain had planned everything that had happened. Having us gather the stones made the Crown's grip on it weak enough that the Brain overcame it and became the Nether Brain. We agreed to give the Emperor the stones and allow him to assimilate the Prince Orpheus. Then we proceeded on. The Nether Brain was released, and Baldur's Gate was on the brink of destruction. Thankfully, all of our friends that we'd made along the way had gathered, ready to lend us their strength. We stepped out as warriors of light, prepared to the teeth to smite the Brain out of existence. When we entered the castle grounds, I tried to sneak in around the corner, but we were spotted, so I quickly flew my party up to the battlements. This was a great area to fight, as the enemies had to go through multiple choke points to get to it. Using flame walls, spike growth, and insect plague, we managed to cull a lot of the weaker close-range enemies that tried to get to us. With our planar allies plus the Emperor to help us, we worked our way through the remaining enemies. Next, we had to climb the tower to the Nether Brain. Now, this was quite annoying, as the enemies got us stuck on the lower level with no movement, so a few of us got hit by the cannons. Eventually, I managed to get everyone on top of things, fly up and take out the enemies, and we eventually reached the door, where we had our last chance to prepare to fight the Brain. I used potions of angelic healing to get everyone fully restored before the fight, and it was finally time to fight the Brain. When we reached the top, the Brain spawned its own group of soldiers, plus the Red Dragon, but luckily I had my own army to summon. On our first 2 rounds, I summoned everyone we had access to. Clerics cohort, Nine Fingers Assassins, the Owlbear Cub, Zevlor and his Hell Riders, Mizora, Nightsong, the Duke's Flaming Fists, Almuthagur, and the Watch. Along with our summons and the spirit weapons, we waged war against the Dragon, Tentacles, and the Brain's champions. Although they really had it out for Karlach and Gal at one point. We did take too long in this fight, going past the 5 turns before reinforcements came, but it made no matter. We got the Emperor up onto the ledge to start channeling to the Crown, and managed to get the party up to protect him. Everyone else dealt with the dragon and the enemies that kept spawning. Once the portal was open, pretty much everyone was dead, and our army had pretty much nothing else to do but to sit around on their hands. The Armen entered the portal and started wailing on the Brain. Karlach used the spell scroll of Artistry of War, which had been saving, and Karlach finished off the Brain.
Impossible. Pain. Fear. Terror. Reconsider. Assess. Implore. Surrender.
We allowed the Emperor to command the Brain to self-destruct and destroy all the tadpoles, causing it to crash into the ocean, finally defeating the Brain. We had done it. The Armen had succeeded in saving Baldur's Gate and restoring balance to the world. Everyone is keen to celebrate and enjoy their victory. However, the Emperor thought it might be best for him to leave. Lae'zel flew off on her dragon, as if she did anything in this campaign. Karlach, however, was beginning to die, but we weren't going to let that happen. Bill suggested that she go to Avernus with him.
Karlach, you're coming with me. Back to Avernus.
Tyr agreed, but he wasn't going to go with them. With Baldur's Gate saved, Tyr decided to right the wrongs of his past and help rebuild the city.
For the first time, you feel alone. Calm. You breathe.
And that, everyone, is the end of my Baldur's Gate 3 Cleric. And what an experience has it been. The Clerics have been an amazing team to wield, and although they have their challenges, I feel we met the challenges and overcame them without too much difficulty. The Clerics, with their ability to heal, summon allies, use spells like Spirit Guardian, Sanctuary, Mass Healing Word, and gain access to a wide array of spells specific to their domain like Destructive Wave and Wall of Fire, all while being able to equip medium to heavy armor depending on your class, makes them an absolute force to be reckoned with. This has been a great playthrough, and I have thoroughly enjoyed making this series for you. I hope you have all enjoyed it, and I would like to take this time to say thank you for watching. This is my first attempt at a series this large, and I'm so glad to see that so many of you have enjoyed it. If you haven't already, like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more videos like this in the future, so I look forward to seeing you there. If you have any suggestions for types of runs that you'd like to see me do in the future, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you everyone, and until next time.